I believe Big and Tupac was in-house. All had something to do with death row people.
Tell me what your reaction is to the arrest of Keefe D.
Well, surprise number one, because I didn't think Keefe D would never get arrested. Nor do I want to see him get arrested.
Just when everyone thought the Tupac case was finally done for good, the feds pulled up with a brand new arrest that flipped the whole situation upside down. And if Keefe D was only the fall guy all along, this fresh arrest is pointing straight toward the real person who was calling the shots. Prosecutors have been keeping a certain name hidden in the shadows for months, and people are saying once that name drops, this whole case could explode wide open. The streets started buzzing fast, like the game got twisted in real time.
Keefe D and his entourage get into a white Cadillac. Along with Keefe D, the driver is a guy named Terrence Brown. They call him Bubble Up. Behind the driver is DeAndre Smith. He's in the left rear passenger seat. And Keefe D's nephew, Orlando Anderson, he's sitting behind the right front passenger seat.
Word on the block is a new arrest just landed out of nowhere in Tupac's case, and it hit like a shockwave. It's like investigators were holding on to a major secret for almost 30 years, just waiting to drop it when no one expected it. And this ain't some rumor or an online theory. This is a real situation, real cuffs, real pressure from every angle.
Lane starts blasting. You say Suge looks over, he sees you.
Yeah.
He looks right at you.
Yeah, he looks at me.
The moment that news broke, everyone's eyes jumped straight to one person, Keefe D. Yeah, the same dude already locked up, already talking, already waiting for his day in court. And people are saying, if this new arrest connects the way insiders claim, Keith's whole story might get cracked open for real. Here's something a lot of folks forget. There were 4 people inside that white Cadillac when the shots went off on September 7th, 1996. 3 of them, Orlando Anderson, DeAndre Big Dre Smith, and Terrence Bubble Up Brown, are no longer here, leaving Keefe D as the only living person who is actually in that car and knows exactly what went down that night.
They're not only ugly on the outside, but they ugly on the inside too.
Dwayne Keefe D. Davis lashing out at prosecutors during another hearing about releasing him on bail. Those boxes contain a 2006 interview from a gang member who prosecutors say implicates Davis in Shakur's murder.
He makes that statement 2 years before any confession the defendant ever made.
The investigation ain't stopping with Keefe D. Not even close. Prosecutors revealed info from a 2006 interview with another gang member who gave statements long before Keith ever spoke publicly. That means someone else out there already told police what they knew, and they did it years ago. But the real shocker is the behind-the-scenes talk.
As the man who is now charged with the murder confessed in 2008 that he was involved and has been saying it very openly in interviews that he handed the gun to a guy named Orlando Anderson, his nephew, and Keefe's story is that Orlando pulled the trigger and fired the shots into the car, which Suge Knight was driving. Tupac was the passenger.
Keefe D himself has been pointing at Reggie Wright Jr., the former head of security at Thorough Records, hinting that bigger players might have been moving pieces that night. And that's just the surface of the story. While the media keeps staring at Keefe D sitting in the Clark County Detention Center
over concerns the man putting up the more than $112,000 was really a middleman. She also said she was concerned Davis could profit off the alleged crime. Law prevents that until a person is convicted.
Right now, his son, myself, even he can enter into a contract with any media entity and make money on this case.
People on the streets are asking the real questions. Who else knew what was coming? Who else should have been in cuffs? And why did it take nearly 3 decades to grab anyone when multiple people clearly had info? Here's how we even reached this point. On September 29th, 2023, Vegas authorities finally arrested Dwayne Keefe D. Davis.
When he looks over at you, and then, Tupac's busy getting shot. Evidently, the story is Tupac's trying to either get out of the
back seat or something.
Yeah, what do you see happening inside of their car?
I seen a bullet going Suge's head. I thought he was dead.
And charged him in Tupac's case. But this wasn't some wild new clue or a dramatic cold case breakthrough. This happened because Keefe D kept talking for years, non-stop, about what went down. Keefe D was everywhere, doing interviews, documentaries, podcasts, any spot that would hand him a mic. He even dropped a book called Compton Street Legend, laying out his street life and his own connection to Pac's case. He spoke with investigators multiple times and became the go-to source for every show covering unsolved hip-hop mysteries.
But speaking out of turn, Davis says he believes those boxes came from retired LAPD detective Greg Kading, who interviewed Davis as part of the investigation into the death of rapper Notorious B.I.G. In a recorded interview, Davis told Kading what happened in Shakur's case, believing he would have immunity.
And in each appearance, he kept saying he was inside that white Cadillac when Tupac got hit that night. Why would anyone keep repeating that? Why admit involvement in something tied to one of the biggest artists ever? The reason is simple. Keith D believed he had immunity from back in 2008 to 2009.
You know, let's get one thing straight, first and foremost. You know, me and Keith D played on the same Pop Warner football team. And whatever the circumstances, if he had an involvement with anything, if he didn't have any involvement in anything, who want to see? I wouldn't wish somebody going to prison on my worst enemy.
When investigators were working the Biggie case, they gave him a proffer agreement, a deal where you can talk and those specific words can't be used against you. But Keith D thought that protection covered anything he ever said about Tupac's case anywhere.
That was something, that was all West Coast, bruh. That was all in-house. If you ask me, that was all in-house.
So you believe Tupac and Biggie murder was in-house?
I believe Biggie and Tupac was in-house. All had something to do with death row people.
And he was completely wrong. Those agreements only protect what's said inside those official sit-downs. They don't cover talking on podcasts.
All Southside Crips.
One of the homies said Death Row guys were going to have a concert at the 662 Club. So we went to the 662 Club.
Online interviews or getting paid to retell the story in documentaries. And they definitely don't protect someone who publishes a book and makes money off those same admissions. Now let's roll back to the night everything unfolded, because the order of events explains why Keith D's arrest is only the start of something bigger. It was September 7th, 1996. Tupac and Suge Knight had just left the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand. Inside the casino lobby, Pac and the Thorough crew jumped Orlando Anderson, a Southside Compton Crip who had tried to snatch a Thorough chain weeks earlier.
Don't comment to make, man.
Listen, it came from their own mouth. DJ Quick. I think they got one of them bad boy niggas. They said they was gonna get him. Who was they? Had to be Death Row. Somebody affiliated with them.
The whole fight at the MGM was caught on camera, and after leaving the casino, Pac and Suge drove toward Club 662 in Suge's black BMW. Around 11:15 p.m., they stopped at a red light on Flamingo and Koval, and that's when the white Cadillac pulled up right next to Pac's side. Shots exploded fast. At least 13 were fired. Tupac was hit 4 times, including a lung shot, 1 to the pelvis, plus wounds to his hand and thigh. Suge got hit with shrapnel but made it out alive.
Said the shots came from the back. Big Dre, Orlando. Who shot Tupac?
They keep it for the code of the streets. It just came from the backseat, bro.
6 days later, on September 13th, Tupac passed away at just 25, shaking the whole world. Here's the part that twists the story even more. Keith D admits he was in the front passenger seat that night. He says the weapon came from the back seat, where Orlando and Big Dre were sitting. But when people ask who actually pulled the trigger, he suddenly gets real blurry with the details. For 27 years, this case barely moved.
I ran the door at the 662. I seen Orlando and them when they pulled up in the Cadillac. When I told my homies, Southside's up here. My homies that was at 662, everybody had their guns. We knew it was gonna be something.
Orlando Anderson was questioned but never charged, then later passed away during an incident in Compton in 1998. Big Dre is gone. Bubble Up gone. Pretty much everyone who could challenge or back up Keith D's version isn't here anymore, leaving him as the only one still talking. On July 17th, 2023.
I don't know Keith D like that to be, singing about no murder stuff like that. I believe he even lied about his nephew and everything. I know he said if he goes to jail for Tupac, Reggie should go to jail for Biggie.
Investigators hit Keith D's home in Henderson, Nevada with a search warrant. They found documents and materials that lined up with things he'd been saying in public. 2 months later, they moved in and arrested him. But here's where it gets wild. People connected to that night are saying Keith D's story doesn't fully match up. And if that's true, the idea that this was just simple street retaliation starts falling apart fast. That MGM fight could have been the perfect distraction for something way more planned out. Keith D and his crew might have been used without even realizing it. Or they might have just been in the right place at the exact moment someone else wanted Pac exposed. How did they know where Pac would be? How did they know his route? How did they show up at that same intersection at the exact second Pac's car hit a red light? The official story claims it was random, that they were just cruising, looking for Thorough members, and suddenly spotted Pac. But plenty of people in the streets aren't buying that for a second. There were way too many coincidences that night. Too much perfect timing, and too many people with motives that had nothing to do with street rivalry. And that brings us right back to the real question. Who else was involved? Prosecutors charged Keith D, even though he admits he wasn't the one who fired the shots. If he rolled with the crew that carried it out, the law holds him responsible. But if that standard applies to him, shouldn't it apply to everyone who had a hand in this? The person who supplied the weapon? The people who might have shared Pac's location? And the folks at Thorough who witnesses claim were celebrating when they heard Pac had passed? That's the talk echoing through the streets right now. People are saying bigger players were tied to this. Folks with more power, more influence, and way more to lose if the full truth came out. And yet Keith D is the only one sitting behind bars while those bigger names are still out here living free. Yeah, now let's get into the courtroom drama and that immunity situation. When Keith D got booked on first-degree charges, everyone thought he'd keep quiet and let his lawyers handle things. But that's not his style. From day one, he acted like he was taping another documentary instead of facing a possible life sentence. The first big issue Keith D's lawyers pushed was the immunity claim. His team argued that everything he said in interviews, his book, and all his public appearances should have been protected under the proffer deal he made back in 2008 to 2009 when he spoke to investigators about Biggie's case. They said he talked about Tupac's situation during those sit-downs, and since agencies like LAPD, Las Vegas Police, and federal investigators all knew what he was saying, he believed he had full immunity for anything involving that night. But prosecutors shut that down fast. They said even if he had limited protection for those specific conversations, that doesn't give him the right to hit every media outlet and publicly confess to being involved. And it definitely doesn't cover him repeating those same details on camera, on podcasts, and in print. They also highlighted something even heavier. Keith D was making money off these stories. He earned from his book, from documentary appearances, and from turning his name into a business. And under Nevada law, you can't profit off wrongdoing. The judge clearly leaned toward the prosecution. Every attempt by Keith D's team to dismiss the case using the immunity argument got denied, so the case kept rolling forward. But that was only the start of the courtroom tension. During one heated bail hearing, Keith D jumped in out of turn, visibly frustrated over how prosecutors were describing him and his family. He was especially upset about the evidence they were bringing up, boxes of documents and old interview transcripts from the original investigations. Then prosecutors dropped something major, a 2006 interview with another gang member who pointed at Davis in connection to Shakur's case, an interview done long before Keith D ever spoke publicly. That changed everything. The judge had real concerns about letting Keith D out on bail. She worried he might use his notoriety to make money while waiting for trial, and she also questioned who was actually putting up the bail funds. Were they legit, or was someone trying to use the case for their own gain? That's when things took an unexpected twist. Keith D's lawyer argued something that had everybody talking. Under Nevada law, a person isn't blocked from making money off their own story unless they've been convicted. So his team claimed he had every right to profit from his version of events until a jury said otherwise. That created a wild situation. Someone charged in one of hip-hop's most well-known cases could still earn money by retelling the same story prosecutors were using against him. It turned into a legal catch-22 that showed just how strange this entire case truly is. But the most explosive moment came when Keith D started pointing at other people he said should also be investigated for their possible roles in unsolved hip-hop cases. Reggie Wright Jr., the former head of security at Thaw Row Records, wasn't some random name Keith D tossed out. He dropped it with intention. Keith D was basically saying that if he was being held responsible for what happened to Tupac, then Reggie Wright Jr. should face questions about Biggie's case. Reggie Wright Jr. has been a controversial figure for years. As the head of Thaw Row Security and the son of Reggie Wright Sr., a Compton officer, he sat in a powerful position, connected to both the streets and law enforcement. Documentaries and investigators have long wondered what he knew, when he knew it, and whether he played any role in either situation. So when Keith D called him out, it seemed like he was trying to do two things. First, shift the heat off himself and onto others he believed should also face scrutiny. And second, hint that the story prosecutors were pushing might be way more complicated than simple street retaliation. The case kept getting more tangled as the trial date was pushed back again and again. What was supposed to happen sooner ended up being delayed all the way to February 2026. Keith D's defense said they needed extra time to track down witnesses, study old evidence, and dig into what they called decades-old claims that could clear him. They even said they had people who could place Keith D somewhere else during the incident and wanted time to build that angle properly. Meanwhile, prosecutors kept stacking their side of the case. They had Keith D's own public statements from interviews, documentaries, and his book. They had evidence from the search warrant at his home. They had witnesses from that night in Vegas backing up parts of the timeline. And they still had forensic details from the original scene even after nearly 30 years. Nevada law plays a huge part here. You don't have to be the one who fired the weapon to face a first-degree felony charge tied to a life-ending incident. Under the felony rule, anyone who takes part in a crime that results in someone losing their life can be held fully responsible. So even though Keith D has never said he pulled the trigger and has always claimed the shots came from the back seat where Orlando and Big Dre were sitting, he can still be convicted. He admits he was in the car, admits he played a role, and admits the whole thing was retaliation for what happened at the MGM, and that alone keeps him in deep legal danger. The streets really locked in once social media jumped on the case. Every court hearing was live tweeted, broken down on YouTube, and argued across hip-hop forums, and public opinion split fast. Some folks said Keith D was finally facing the consequences after years of talking publicly and making money off what happened to Pac. Others said he was being used as a fall guy, someone who trapped himself by talking too much while the real decision makers stayed out of sight. Now here's where things get cloudy, because even though his arrest looks strong based on his own words, plenty of people, including major voices from the Thaw Row era, say the whole retaliation story is either incomplete or totally off. And the loudest person saying this is Marion Sujay Knight. Sujay was right next to Pac when the shots went off. He was driving the BMW, got hit with shrapnel, and he's one of the only people left who witnessed everything firsthand. But what he's been saying from prison does not match Keith D's version. When TMZ asked Sugi for his reaction to the arrest, his response shocked a lot of people. Just think about that. Sue Knight, the man who was inches from Pac, the man who survived the attack, the man you'd expect to demand justice more than anyone. He said he doesn't want to see Keith D arrested. Some people say Suge might have just been trying to sound respectful, not wanting someone from his old neighborhood locked up. But there's another angle the streets keep bringing up. What if Suge doesn't want Keith D arrested because he believes Keith D isn't the real person behind what happened that night? What if Keith D's arrest is actually blocking the full truth from surfacing? There's a long-running theory that goes way deeper than any street retaliation, and it's been whispered about for years. According to this idea, both Tupac's case and later Biggie's case were inside jobs connected to people tied to Thaw Row Records, not random street beef. This claim hits hard because it suggests the motive wasn't rivalry. It was money, influence, and control. And this theory isn't coming from random internet voices. Some well-connected people have hinted at it too. The idea goes like this. By 1996, Tupac was becoming harder for certain folks to influence. He was planning to leave Thaw Row, launch his own label, Machiavelli Records, and take a strong lineup of artists with him. On top of that, rumors said Pac wanted to audit Thaw Row's finances and expose any irregularities, which would have caused major problems for certain people. This theory says the whole setup around Keith D and the Southside Crips was way too perfect to be random. They were out looking for Thaw Row members, they happened to have a weapon with them, and they pulled up at the exact moment Pac was exposed in the BMW. That timing feels way too precise to be coincidence. Some people believe Keith D and his crew were steered into place, pushed into being at the right spot, while someone else called the shots from behind the scenes. And when you think about it, the questions stack up fast. How did Keith D's crew know Pac and Soog were even headed to Club 662 that night? How did they know the route from the MGM to the club? How did they land at the exact intersection, at the exact moment Pac's car stopped at a red light with the windows down? Was it really chance? Or was information being fed to them? But here's the twist, the part that makes everything even more confusing. Whatever plan people think might have existed, Pac and Sugi never even made it to Club 662. They got caught at that intersection on Flamingo and Koval, and that's where everything exploded. Keith D has always chosen his words carefully. He's admitted he was in the car, admitted he was in the front seat, and admitted the shots came from the back. But when it comes to who actually pulled the trigger, whether it was Orlando or Big Dre, he never gives a straight answer. Some people think he keeps it vague to protect his late nephew's name. Others believe he truly doesn't know who fired in that split-second chaos with adrenaline blasting and everything happening fast. Then there's a third idea, that Keith D knows exactly who pulled the trigger, but that person isn't who everyone assumes, and telling the truth would expose something way bigger than simple retaliation. That's what makes this whole case both huge and frustrating. It forces everyone to look back at one of the darkest moments in hip-hop history. The East Coast versus West Coast tension in the mid-90s destroyed lives, tore apart friendships, and changed the culture forever. Tupac and Biggie, two legends at the top of their game, were both taken in their prime, and decades later, we're still trying to understand what really happened and why. The trial keeps getting pushed back, now delayed until February 2026, after the defense asked for more time and new evidence started coming in. Keith D's team claims they've got fresh witnesses who say he was somewhere else during the incident, and if that's true, it could flip the entire case on its head. On top of that, Davis caught a new charge in January 2025 for an alleged fight in jail. Prosecutors are using that to argue he's still a threat and should stay locked up while everything moves forward. His lawyers fired back with multiple motions, including one in October 2025, trying to suppress evidence from the 2023 raid on his home, saying the search had procedural issues. The motion was later withdrawn, but it raised big questions about how solid some of the prosecution's evidence really is. And then there's the Diddy angle, something that keeps resurfacing. In past statements, including a 2008 DEA interview and his 2019 book, Davis claimed that Sean Diddy Combs once offered $1 million for a hit on Tupac and Soog. Diddy has strongly denied this, calling the accusations made up and even filing defamation claims. No evidence has ever surfaced to charge him, and investigators say he was never considered a suspect. Still, the fact that these claims keep reappearing, especially while Diddy faces unrelated legal issues, adds another wild twist to a case already full of mystery. At the end of the day, Keith D's arrest has created more questions than answers. If he's convicted, some will say justice was finally delivered. But others will wonder if he was just the easiest person to blame, while anyone else who might have played a role, whether tied to the label, the streets, or even people with deeper influence, continues to move freely. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. And don't forget to hit that next video on your screen. See you on the next one.